The alarm in my chest went off before the one on my wrist did. I was standing in the middle of the Chavareth Cultural Wing, surrounded by glass cases holding pieces of dead worlds, when I saw something that should not exist. A ring. A badge. A stone seal, all carrying the same mark. A wolf's head over 2 cross stalks of wheat. My family's crest, the exact one my grandfather wore on his hand until the day he died. My name is Elena Marsh, and until that moment, my job was simple. I worked as a junior attaché for the human delegation inside the Galactic Preservation Authority, a place where alien species stored the remains of civilizations that no longer existed. Most days, nobody looked at me twice. Humans were the newest species to reach the stars, and everyone made sure we knew it. That morning, I was only there to observe the unveiling of a new exhibit called Relics of the Fallen Frontier. The Chavareth curators loved ceremony, so they had gathered ambassadors, scholars, and reporters from a dozen systems to watch the unveiling of artifacts pulled from a colony that had been wiped out long before recorded galactic history began. I was not paying much attention until my eyes landed on that case. I stepped closer, and my heart began to pound. The glass reflected my own face back at me, pale and confused. I pulled out my personal device with shaking hands and opened an old photograph, one I kept saved from home. It showed my grandfather's hand, wearing his ring, the same wolf, the same wheat, the same forge marks along the edge. I looked up at the placard beside the case. It read, "Origin unknown. Recovered from outer colony ruins. Presumed remains of a primitive pre-spaceflight settlement. Estimated age, 12,000 years." 12,000 years. Humans had only been traveling among the stars for a little over a century. There was no way an object carrying my family's mark could be that old, unless everything I had been taught about my own species was wrong. A curator named Doran approached, his long silver robes brushing the floor as he noticed me standing frozen in place. "Something troubling you, Miss Marsh?" he asked, his tone polite but distant, the way most of the alien staff spoke to humans, like we were guests who did not quite belong. "This crest," I said, pointing at the case. "I need to know where it came from." He glanced at it briefly. As the placard states, it was recovered from the outer colony ruins during a survey 3 decades ago. A minor settlement, long extinct. "Why do you ask?" I held up my device and showed him the photograph. "Because this is my grandfather's ring. This exact design has been in my family for generations." Doran's expression shifted, just slightly, from polite boredom to something sharper. "That is not possible. The item you are looking at predates human spaceflight by thousands of years." "I know," I said. "That is exactly the problem." He studied the photo for a long moment, then looked at the ring in the case, then back at me. I could see him trying to explain it away, searching for some simple answer that would let him dismiss me and move on with his ceremony. But the marks were too precise. The wheat stalks curled in the same direction. The wolf's eye had the same small chip in the same corner. "I would like to see the recovery records," I said. "Please." He hesitated, glancing toward the other guests, still admiring the exhibit, clearly not wanting a scene. "This is highly irregular. So is finding my family's crest in a 12,000-year-old ruin," I said. He led me to a side room, away from the crowd, and pulled up the survey data on a wall screen. Coordinates, images, soil samples, decay estimates. I am not a scientist, but I know how to read numbers, and none of them made sense next to what I knew about my own history. The colony had been built with tools that matched no known ancient culture in the survey database. The architecture used measurements based on a system almost identical to old Earth units. The metal in the ring matched an alloy that, according to the notes, still puzzled researchers because it resembled steel refined using a process invented on Earth only 200 years ago. Except this ring was 12,000 years old. "This cannot be a coincidence," I said quietly. Doran did not answer right away. He was staring at the screen with the same unsettled look I imagined was on my own face. Word spread quickly. Within an hour, 3 more scholars had joined us in the side room, each one examining the data with growing discomfort. A researcher named Talia Voss, one of the few historians who had actually studied Earth's short spacefaring history, kept shaking her head. "According to every record we have," she said, "your species did not exist beyond your solar system until roughly 130 years ago. There is no mention anywhere of a prior expansion." "Maybe there was one," I said. "Maybe it just was not recorded. Or maybe it was erased." Nobody wanted to say the word forgotten, but I could see it sitting behind their eyes. I asked to see more of the recovered items from the colony, and Doran, now more curious than dismissive, brought out sealed containers from storage. Inside, I found fragments of old tools, a child's toy shaped like a small wooden horse, and a torn piece of cloth with faded stitching. I recognized the stitching pattern immediately. It was the same style my grandmother used on quilts passed down through 5 generations of our family. My hands trembled as I touched the edge of the container, careful not to disturb the fragile fabric inside. "This is not just a similar culture," I said. "This is my family." By the time the news reached the main exhibit hall, a small crowd of ambassadors and reporters had gathered outside the side room, drawn by the sudden shift in mood among the staff. Doran, to his credit, did not try to hide what we had found. He walked back out with me, the recovery data displayed on a portable screen for everyone to see. The room went quiet as delegates from a dozen species read through the details for themselves. I could feel their eyes shifting toward me, no longer with the polite disinterest I was used to, but with something closer to unease. A Velkari ambassador named Rish stepped forward, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied the numbers. "If this data is accurate, it would mean humanity existed among the stars long before any of us encountered your species. That contradicts everything on record." "I know," I said. "I did not expect this either, but the evidence is right here." "This could rewrite the understood timeline of known civilizations," Talia added, her voice quieter now, almost cautious. "If humans expanded once before, and that expansion ended, and every trace of it was lost or destroyed, then the history we have all been taught about your species is incomplete, possibly by a significant margin." I thought about my grandfather's ring sitting on his hand every day of my childhood, how he always said the crest came from a long line before him, older than anyone could remember. I always thought he meant a few centuries, not 12,000 years. Not an entire vanished chapter of my own people's history that nobody, not even we ourselves, remembered living through. "There might be more sites like this one," I said, looking around the room at faces that no longer saw me as simply the new arrival from a young species. "If this colony existed, there could be others. Other proof that we came further and further back than anyone realized." Doran nodded slowly. "The authority will need to reopen the survey records for that entire sector. If your species truly reached this far in the past, other ruins may hold answers we have long misclassified as belonging to unknown, extinct cultures." I felt something shift in the room, a change I had not expected to witness in my lifetime. For as long as I had worked here, humans had been treated as the newest guests at a very old table, tolerated, but rarely respected. Now, for the first time, I saw scholars from ancient established civilizations looking at a piece of my family's history with the same wonder they usually reserved for their own oldest myths. "I would like this ring returned to my family," I said. "Not kept as a display piece labeled unknown origin. It belongs with us, not behind glass." Doran considered this for a long moment, then nodded. "Given the circumstances, that seems only fair." As the crowd slowly dispersed, whispers spreading through the hall about what this discovery could mean, I stayed behind a little longer, staring at the case that had started everything. The wolf's head, the wheat stalks, a symbol I had known my whole life, now tied to a past far older and far stranger than I had ever imagined. I thought about all the other cases in that wing, all the other artifacts labeled unknown or extinct, sitting quietly under alien lights, waiting for someone to recognize them the way I had recognized this one. How many of those forgotten cultures were not truly gone at all? How many were simply waiting, patiently, in pieces of dust and metal, for someone to finally come home and remember them? As I left the museum that evening, carrying a small container with my grandfather's long-lost relative's ring inside, I felt the weight of something much larger than myself. Not just a family history rediscovered, but a quiet reminder to everyone who had ever underestimated us. Humanity was not new. We had only forgotten how old we truly were.